Hello guys, and welcome back to our channel. The baby just went down for a nap, so I thought I would sit down and finally film my birth story for you guys. So if you guys are regular watchers, then you probably saw our birth vlog, so you'll kind of have an idea of what happened. But I just thought that it would be a good idea to go over everything so you guys know exactly what did happen and how it happened. And I had a lot of people requesting that I did this video, so I am going to film that right now. If you're new to our channel, welcome. I was induced at 39 weeks and 3 days with my son Israel because of his small size. Basically, from the 20-week ultrasound and on, he was measuring in the 10th percentile or below. OBs get really concerned when babies are straddling that 10% and under. So for about the last month of my pregnancy, we were getting weekly ultrasounds. So we were getting BPPs, which basically were to make sure that he was practice breathing. And then we were also getting monthly growth scans just to make sure that he was doing well. He also had a condition that's called persistent right umbilical vein. And it basically just meant that he was getting his nutrients from another vein. He was supposed to be getting it from one vein, but he was getting it from a different vein. I did research on that when I found out he had persistent right umbilical vein, and some of the research said that babies who have that tend to have a low birth weight. But also, I'm a really small person. I'm only 5'1", and also me and my husband weren't big babies when we were born either. But that's why I was induced, because of his size. So on Monday, August 19th, I came into the hospital at 7 p.m. to start my induction process. So when you get induced for medical reasons, they check you into a room right away, so I didn't have to go to triage or anything like that. Filled out all of my paperwork. We sat in the waiting room for about 10 minutes, and then we got called back into our room, and we kind of hung out in the room for a little bit, and they started hooking me up to an IV to get some fluids started, and then after that they would get my Pitocin started. Once they started hooking me up to the IV, I was doing good. I'm not very good with getting my blood drawn or getting IVs put in, but as long as it's quick, I can handle it. The nurse that was sticking the IV in was struggling to get it in, and she told me, oh, you have a really roly-poly vein. And I was like, oh my gosh. So as soon as she said that, I start to like pass out. I started going downhill. I'm like, you shouldn't have told me that. It was taking her forever. She pulled it out and she's like, okay, I'm gonna have to redo it. And I was like, are you kidding me? Oh, and also when I got there, they put belly monitors on me, so a contraction monitor and then the heart rate monitor to make sure that the baby was doing okay. As soon as I start to pass out, his heart rate drops significantly. Nurses start flooding into the room. Doctors start running into the room. I'm being flip-flopped from side to side. I'm given an oxygen mask. They were pushing Aidan out of the way. They were basically trying to make sure that Israel was doing okay, and they were trying to stop me from passing out. And after I came back and was doing good, my nurse had told me that when you pass out, your body doesn't protect the baby. Your body only protects you. So when you start to pass out, your body cuts off all supply to the baby. So as soon as I was okay, the nurse ended up getting the IV in a different vein, a better vein, and it was all good from there. But I also think she was struggling a little bit because of my sleeve, and it's kind of hard to see the veins through my tattoos. So after the IV was put in, they wanted me to go through a full bag of liquids, and I did really quickly. At around 9:40 is when they started me on my Pitocin drip. I tried to sleep for a couple of hours, but when I'm not in my own bed, I can't sleep. And nurses are constantly coming in to check on me. Israel would be moving around, and so the heart rate monitor would no longer be able to track his heart rate, and so they would have to come in, replace it, or have me move positions. It was just really annoying. So I pretty much started getting consistent contractions right when the Pitocin started, but they were very minimal. They were like tiny little period cramps, not bad at all. Nothing really happened from 9 until about 12:45. So I was trying to sleep, laying on my side, and I felt this really weird pop, and I was like, what the heck was that? Like, that was really weird. But nothing was gushing out, nothing came out, and I didn't move either. I was being really still, just trying to sleep. So I was like, oh, it was probably just a really intense gas bubble. I don't know. But it was so intense and so weird that I was like second guessing if my water broke, but nothing was coming out, so I wasn't sure. I tried to sleep a little bit longer, and then finally finally I had to pee so bad that I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm gonna get up and go to the bathroom. And as soon as I sit up, a little bit of liquid just starts to like trickle out onto the bed. And I was like, that's definitely not blood. It's definitely clear. I think my water broke. So I called in my nurse and I said, hey, there's clear liquid leaking out. I'm not sure what it is. Do you wanna come check? So she comes in. I told her I felt a weird pop, but I wasn't sure if my water had broke or not. And she's like, okay, well, we'll keep an eye on it. And if your water really did break, then you're gonna continue to just gush liquid out. So as I go to the bathroom, I start to sit on the toilet and just more starts trickling out. And I was like, okay, yep, my water did actually break. And I was super excited because I guess only 30% of women have their water break on their own without the doctors breaking it for them. And it was so cool. I was so excited that my body did that on its own. After that happened, I asked for a birthing ball because my contractions were starting to pick up a little bit. They're still very bearable. I could talk through them. Everything was good. But I definitely wanted to sit on a birthing ball to be a little bit more comfortable. And I took out my laptop and I started watching Jaclyn Hill because she had posted a new video. After watching her video, I decided, okay, I'm gonna try to go back to sleep. Although my contractions were starting to pick up a little bit, I still just wanted to try to see if I could rest. So I tried to go back to sleep, not really. I kind of just lay in bed and work through the contractions. I get on my phone, just mess around on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. And then finally at about 3:45 a.m., my contractions start to pick up a good amount to the point where I'm moaning through them. I decide to stand up to start like moving my body a little bit to try to relieve the pain that I'm feeling. And at that time, my husband ended up waking up because I was getting louder trying to get through these contractions. So he woke up and he asked me if I wanted to go take a walk because standing up through my contractions actually felt a little bit better. And I decided, yeah, I do kind of want to go take a walk. So I called one of the nurses and asked her if she could get me the movable monitors. So they had a set of monitors that were basically on like a battery pack type thing. And they were also waterproof so I could get in the tub if I wanted to. But basically it just made me more mobile and they could still be tracking the baby and the contractions at the same time. So I asked her if she could bring those to me. She did. I got those put on. And as soon as I got those put on, I felt like my contractions just got even worse. And I was like, actually, I don't want to go on a walk. I would rather jump in the tub and labor in the tub for a little bit. So Aidan went into the bathroom and he turned on the bath for me and got it going so I could get into the tub and start laboring in the water to help relieve me a little bit. I ended up getting in the tub at about 4 a.m. and I also asked one of my nurses if I could have a popsicle and she brought me a popsicle. So I labored in the tub and had a popsicle and me and Aidan were just talking. At that point while I was in the tub, my contractions were getting really, really intense, very intense. Like I sounded like a whale trying to get through those contractions. And also while I was in the tub, I felt like my body was like pushing. Every time I had a contraction, I felt like pressure, but not super intense. Like they always say when the baby is moving down the canal that there's like a lot of pressure. And I felt a little bit of pressure, but I didn't feel too much. After about an hour of laboring in the tub at about 5 a.m., I called in the nurse and I asked to be checked for dilation for the first time. The last time that I was checked was the Friday before and I was at 2 centimeters. So I called in the nurse, asked if I could be checked for dilation for the first time. And at this point, I was thinking that I was probably dilated to a 4 or a 5. And I thought that I was in like really early labor. I kept thinking to myself, I'm probably not gonna have this baby until sometime tonight. I'm in early labor right now. Things are just picking up. They're just getting started. And every time I had a contraction, I was starting to get really, really nauseous and not feeling good. But once the contraction was over, I felt great and I was like, okay, I can do this. I can get through my next contraction. I would have a contraction and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want pain meds. And then after that, I was like, okay, actually I'm doing good. Finally, my nurse comes back from her break. I get out of the tub and she checks me for dilation. And as she's checking me, she asked me, she was like, are you feeling any pressure? And I was like, not intensely, not really. She looks at me and she's like, you're at a 9.5. And I was like, are you serious? I literally got a lump in my throat. I was so just beyond shocked and amazed at what my body had done in the short amount of hours that I had actually been hooked up to Pitocin. So my Pitocin started at 9:40 p.m. and by 5 a.m. I was already at a 9.5. And so she looked at me and she said, "You are a rock star. You can do this naturally if you want to. You are doing great. You're killing this induction. You're doing amazing. But if you want to get the epidural, we can get it right now." And at that point, I was really contemplating if I wanted to go all natural or if I wanted to get the epidural. And it was kind of a tough decision for me to make because I knew that I was already dilated, but I also knew in my head that just because I was at a 9.5 didn't mean that the baby was gonna be here within an hour. And the contractions were getting pretty bad, so I got scared at that point, honestly. I kind of got a little bit freaked out knowing that I was already at a 9.5, and I told her that I wanted to get the epidural. So she said, "Okay, you can do it naturally, but if you want the epidural, we'll get you the epidural." And she made me feel better. She was like, "You know, I got the epidural too with my little girl. I'll go call the anesthesiologist for you and they'll come in." So at about 6 a.m. is when the anesthesiologist came in to start prepping me for the epidural and getting everything started. And honestly, the epidural was a breeze for me. It was so easy. Basically, all they did was just numb me. It felt like 3 little pricks in my back, and then after that, I didn't feel barely anything. And every time he told me that I might feel like a zinging or a weird feeling, I never felt it. Like, it was super comfortable the entire time. Also, after we found out that I was a 9.5, Aidan ended up calling my mom, his mom, and my sister to come back to the hospital because it was almost baby time, and they were shocked. They were like, "We thought you were gonna call us when she was like a 5 or a 6. And he was like, "Well, it was the first time she was checked and she was already at a 9.5, so it's time to get up here." So at about 7 a.m. is when my family came in, and I was happy because the epidural was in and I was feeling great. I started to get a little bit hungry, so she got me 2 containers of Jell-O, she got me 2 popsicles, and she made me chicken broth. It was so delicious. I loved her chicken broth. Like, it just made me feel so much better. Like I said, every contraction that I was having from the time that I got in the tub up until I had my epidural, I was feeling really nauseous, but I was also really hungry at the same time. So what I didn't know and what I didn't realize is that when I was in the tub laboring and every time I had a contraction and I was getting nauseous, that actually meant that I was in transition. And I had no idea that I was in transition at all. I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm starting to get nauseous with every contraction that I was having. And after I chowed down on all of my food that I was allowed to eat, we just relaxed for a couple of hours. So I guess I wasn't 100% effaced yet. So they had me flip onto my left side. They gave me a peanut ball and a sandbag to move my baby's head because I guess his head wasn't in the best position either. So I had to lay there. And my labor and delivery nurse, you guys, she was, I cannot rave about her enough. I've always felt like just because you're dilated to a 10 does not mean that your body is ready or your baby is ready for you to push yet. Like, just because you're completely open doesn't necessarily mean that the baby's right there ready to be born. I've always felt like that. Like, it just made sense to me that it's not always like, oh, you're at a 10, that means it's time to push, it's time to go. Because I basically was at a 10 at 5 a.m. when I got checked, and then I didn't start pushing until about 10:30. So I was dilated to a 10 for about 5 hours before I started pushing. It's all because my labor and delivery nurse was amazing, and she knew that just because I was at a 10 doesn't mean that the baby was ready, doesn't mean I was ready, and she allowed my body to continue to do its work with every contraction and push him down the canal until he was right there, ready to be born. She told me every single baby that I help deliver, every single patient that I have, it never takes more than an hour for the baby to come out. I wish every single woman who was giving birth could have her as their nurse, because it would save them hours and hours and hours of pushing. So I was just really thankful that she had the same beliefs that I did about labor and delivery. And also, she has been in the industry for about 35 years. So she has been doing it for a very long time. So at about 10 o'clock is when the doctor came in. They put a catheter in, emptied my bladder, which literally took like 10 minutes. I'm not kidding. I have no idea how that amount of pee was inside of my bladder. Like it was like 64 ounces of pee, I feel like. I don't know how it was in my body. I don't know how my bladder didn't explode. I started to push at 10:30. His head was already right there. You could see his hair already. My body had done all of the work for me. I started pushing. I pushed for a total of 6 times, so 3 contractions, and he was out at 10:58 a.m. on August 20th. I ended up tearing a little bit. I tore actually to the side, which is really weird and uncommon. I only had about 3 stitches, so my tearing was very minimal. I know that the only reason that I barely tore is because I only pushed 6 times for a little less than 30 minutes. From start to finish, my labor and delivery was a little over 12 hours from start to Pitocin to baby being born, because Pitocin started at about 10 p.m. Baby was born at almost 11 a.m. My labor and delivery was so extremely fast, so quick, so easy, so beautiful that my nurses actually warned me and said to be very careful with my next baby and not to labor at home for too long because of how quickly this process went, especially with it being an induction and it being my first baby. I was just so incredibly thankful and blessed at how easy and beautiful the entire labor and delivery and induction process was, because you guys, I was absolutely terrified to be induced. I was terrified to be induced because all you ever hear is horrible induction stories. People always want to tell you their horrible, terrifying labor and delivery stories. You never hear about the positive ones, and I want to be that positive birth story, that positive induction birth story, because inductions are scary. You're forcing your body to go into labor and deliver this baby using chemicals. Like, it's not your body going into labor, you're forcing your body to go into labor. And I didn't want to do that because I had only heard horrible things about it, that a lot of times inductions lead to C-sections because they're so slow moving, because you're forcing yourself to go into labor. And also inductions usually last about 2 days. You're in labor for about 2 days with an induction. And also I had heard that inductions were superhuman contractions and that they're like 10 times worse than just regular contractions. I had also heard that when you get induced, that the contractions are superhuman from the beginning. Like there was no building up to them. None of that was true for me, you guys. So if you are getting induced and you found this video because you're getting induced, don't be nervous, because a positive induction story can be possible. It was possible with me. My biggest advice for women who are going in to be induced is to make sure that you are active for the weeks leading up to your induction, because I really believe that since I went into my induction already dilated, that it played a huge part in why my labor and delivery was so easy and beautiful, is because my body was already dilated. So what I did is I was running up and down my stairs basically until I couldn't walk anymore. And then me and my husband were taking our dogs on walks every single night. And also we just kept going like shopping, because when you're shopping, you're walking. So we would go to the mall, walk around the entire mall. We were just constantly active and moving because I wanted to put myself into labor. And what it ended up doing was helping my body dilate and preparing me for my induction. So if you go into your induction already dilated, your process will be a lot smoother and a lot easier. So that's my biggest advice for you if you are going in to be induced, is try to get your body to open up and get itself dilated. I hope that you guys enjoyed my positive birth story. I am so incredibly blessed. Like every time I look at my little boy, I just am reminded of how good God is. And we had so many people praying for us. I believe that another reason why my labor and delivery went so smoothly is because we had so many people praying for us. We were completely and totally covered in prayer. And so if you guys prayed for us during our labor and delivery or our pregnancy or any of that, I just want to thank you so much. It means the world to me to know that I have people out there praying for me just as I am praying for you guys. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this video. If you guys have any prayer requests, leave them down below. If they're too personal, you can DM me or my husband on our Instagrams. Okay, so I am going to give a shout out to Nikki Phillips. She commented commented on our last video. So shout out to you, Nikki. If you would like a shout out, all you have to do is make sure to be subscribed and comment down below. And that is all you have to do to get a shout out. And today's verse of the blog is Proverbs 18:10, and it says, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man runs into it and is safe." That is it for this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to be subscribed, comment down below, turn on the post notifications so you know every time we upload. You guys are loved, and we will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.